Hey folks, this is Sonia aka Sony Girl and we are currently in patch 10.1.5. Not long ago the game introduced us the new mega dungeon called the Dawn of the Infinite. It's an 8 boss dungeon which plays more like a mini raid, so these bosses are definitely harder than your average dungeon boss. Players will fight off against mighty bosses like Iridikron, Galakron and Morchi. The latter is Chromi's evil alter ego. Your main goal is to stop the Infinite Dragonflight from turning Nasdormu into Morozond, and this mega dungeon is going to be very similar to Legion's Return to Karajan, Battle for Azeroth's Operation Mechagon, and Shadowlands Tazavesh the Wild Market. If you like this guide, please hit that like button and subscribe so you never miss another video. The first boss we face is Chronikar, who has a very few important abilities. To start with Sunstorm. It will mark every player with a circle, and after a short delay, it will deal AoE damage around you and drop a sand puddle that will damage a player upon expiration. Drop them at the side of the room to keep the encounter space clear. The main ability to watch out for this is Eon Shatter. The boss is gonna leap between two players, dealing big damage in a large circle. Make sure you dodge it and a little missiles that fire out from it. Mark players move out of the group when the big circle turns more solid and the arrow disappears from above your head. The target is locked and it's time to move out of the big circle and then move back into soak the small circle afterwards. You should have enough time to always get the small soaks. If you miss a small soak, your entire group is going to take a huge AoE damage and damage over time, so you really can't miss them. And then the boss also uses Chronic Shear, dealing heavy damage to your tanks, applying a healing absorb as well as a nasty debuff. The debuff increases the damage what tanks take until it's dispelled, but you can't dispel it while the healing absorb persists, so use some big heals, preferably target heals on your tank, and get this debuff off the tanks. And that's pretty much it. You just have to handle AoE damage and later circle dance. Well, in overall this boss isn't too bad, but let's not forget it's just the first boss from 8. We are currently moving towards the Manifested Time Waste boss, it's boss number 2. Here we don't have much choices later when we will select which boss to kill. And to spawn the next boss you will need to kill odds that are spawning from the portals. These odds have some nasty abilities, and there is also swirls that are dropping on the ground. Avoid those. Try to control the odds so they don't cast, and also keep the tank full HP so it's not coming some unexpected damage. Speaking a bit about my spec, I will link it here. I will show it right at the middle of the screen. And this is a spec I took with Purge. I had as well Purify Spirit, just in case. And also I always play with Primordial Wave, Improved Primordial Wave, and absolutely continuous waves. That will help me to deal with encounters where my group stays quite separately from each other. And also keep the group topped as much as I can, as quick as I can. Of course I play with Ascendants, and I always take Flash Flood to keep my healing waves quick and effective. So the next boss is Manifested Time Waste. Throughout the fight with the Manifested Time Waste, the areas is going to be split into two different types of areas. The light yellow areas called Accelerating Time. These are the fast zones, and then the darker brown areas called Decaying Times are slow zones. You will take constant damage over time, no matter which zone you are in, but the fast zone is going to increase your movement speed by 30%, while the slow zone gives you a 20% damage reduction buff. The zones constantly rotate around the boss, and they also interact with various abilities. Tank must always stay in melee range of the boss, otherwise it will enrage and deal AoE damage to entire group and getting a stacking damage increasing buff. So always hug the boss in the melee if you can, or if you see that there is a lack of melee in your group. Throughout the fight, the boss will throw out these little fragments of time balls, or they also called pockets of time. If you get hit by them, you'll take damage and stacking damage over time, so you'll want to dodge those. They move faster in the yellow zones and slower in the brown zones. The brown zone create big gaps in the circle of balls, which gives you an easy spot to dodge through them. Thus, a major ability is Chrono Faded. This is a magical debuff that lasts 8 seconds on 2 players and that deals damage over time to the affected player. But if the player is standing in the accelerating zone, it deals damage faster and it increases the effect of the debuff by 0.5 seconds. So try and stay in the decaying brown zone to reduce the damage taken. When the debuff expires or is dispelled, the player shoots out a big wave, and that wave moves faster if you get dispelled while in the accelerating zone, and slower if you get dispelled in the decaying zone. So, if your healer is ready to dispel you, I would recommend to stay in the fast zone to get this debuff off, because the slow waves stick around way longer and does more damage. This boss also has an ability for tanks. Unwind deals heavy damage at a frontal cone, twice in accelerating zone, so no one should stand on the tank. If your tanks are in the decaying zone, the second hit will come much later with a delay, giving you time to top your tank up with the damage reduction buff in place. Your tank should probably stay in the slow zone as much as they can for this during the entire fight. And that was the boss. Still quite chaotic, especially with the group spread so widely. And some important notes is definitely it helped to have Graceful Spirit that helped me to cast on a run, and as well the cooldown reduction on this ability, Spirit Walker Grace. We are moving to the next boss, and we are going to fight next Blight of Galakron. You can actually skip some trash, but currently the trash dies quite quick, so we decided just to fight it all. And there's not much deadly abilities yet, but I believe when the dungeon will become Mythic Plus dungeon, that will be much harder to deal with, and much more abilities to look for. There's a lot of talking and RP currently, so we have to wait for each portal spawn, but it's also what I actually very like about this dungeon. It looks magnificent, and also I very like the lore, and this dungeon has a quite interesting lore that cross a lot of previous expansions, but also the current expansion, and it's a lot of dragons, as the Dragonflight is. We're moving to the next boss. That's actually where we're gonna fight 4 bosses total, and I would say that this boss can get chaotic really fast. So one of the main abilities that I would say you should look out for, it's called Corrosive Infusion. Corrosive Infusion, it's a debuff that you will get over your head almost at the beginning of the encounter, and this debuff lasts for 12 seconds. It will deal damage over time. If it expires on the player will get mind controlled. So to prevent that, you need to pass the debuff to another player before it expires. Just run over someone else and you'll pass the debuff on it, and it also restarts 12 seconds timer. You'll have also a whole bunch of swirls to dodge, so if you get hit by those, you'll take a severe amount of damage and get stunned. And the next ability to look out for is Blight Reclamation. This is a frontal cone on a tank that deals physical damage and pulls anyone who gets hit inward into the boss. The ability also removes the corrosion debuff, so you need to get hit by this frontal if you have the debuff, or pass the debuff to your tank just before the next reclamation cast. The boss seems to use this at 0 energy, so you can track it by looking at his energy bar, and If when boss is super low on energy, make sure to pass a debuff to the tanks. Boss is also going to constantly leave puddles of ooze beneath it, so kite it around the room to make sure the puddles don't ever get too huge. At 80%, the boss turns into a zone, gaining necrotic winds ability, and it will continue to use all the same abilities. This ability deals heavy group damage, knocks you away, and spawns tornadoes that shoot outwards from the boss. For this part of the fight, you want to group up best you can and use some healing cooldowns if needed while dodging the tornadoes. At 50%, boss splits into Lost Skelet and Shock. Lost Skelet will use Necrofrost ability that traps a player in frost, reducing their haste by 5% and dealing damage over time. Focus with your DPS to break the frost by destroying it. The Shock will use incinerating Light Breath to 3 players in front of her and do periodical damage. The Noxious Ejection just deals a lot of damage, so your job as a healer will be to keep everyone alive during the entire fight. The two bosses do share health, so just nuke them down as quickly as you can, and that's pretty much it for this boss. Watch out as well for the puddles as they get bigger as you stay in them. The fight was quite actually fun, especially when I encountered it for the first time, and I think it's cool that one boss transforms into many bosses with different abilities. It also has quite interesting mechanics, and I like this fight. As a shaman, it's not much specific that I can highlight. Perhaps that watch out for the orbs, and if there is a lot of range, you better try to coordinate when the orbs should expire. So try to carry orb from them to the tank to avoid wipes and control the situation. We are moving towards the next boss, and the next boss is Iridicron. Well, speaking a bit about my build as well, this build I use a lot in Mythic Plus dungeons. I always play with Primordial Wave. Currently, it's my favorite build. I also use Ancestral Awakening that gives me some passive heal on the most injured allies, and also I use High Tide when I need to cast Chain Heal. But Chain Heal became much less usability for me as I am using Primordial Wave, and Healing Wave is currently main goal to save the mana and as well persist with keeping everyone alive. So next boss is Iridicron the Stone Scale. This boss has a lot of specific abilities that you need to deal with in the correct way, or you are going to have a really bad time. The first big ability is Extinction Blast. This ability targets one player with a big AoE circle that Chromie will teleport nearby that player and put up a time bubble. The player with Extinction Blast needs to stand on Chromie, but everyone else in your group can stand whenever they want. As soon as the blast goes off, Chromie will become exhausted and have a massive damage increasing debuff, and Iridicron throws some more damage right towards her with Stonecracker Barrage ability. At this moment, the tank should soak the little circles in front of the Chromie, while everyone else stands on top of Chromie to split the damage. If you do this right, you'll get a big haste buff called Timeline Acceleration. If Chromie starts getting too low on health, as a healer you should top Chromie up whenever it's possible. Another important ability is Earth Surge. The boss shields himself and starts pulsing for group-wide AoE damage. The damage also increases for each pulse, so you need to break the shield quickly by debasing the boss during the ability. And the boss also starts sending out rending earth spikes, so you have to dodge those while debasing the shield down and keeping the group and Chromie alive. There's also a massive frontal cone attack. Watch out for Pulverizing Exhalation. It covers a huge portion of the encounter space, and each player also gets a small AoE circle around them, just like on the Balakar Khan from the Nokhund offensive dungeon. you will want to move away and to not overlap another player. When the debuff expires, each player is going to spawn and pulverizing creation, bring those that placed away from the majority of the group by interrupting them or using abilities to creep or knock depending on the team. Throughout all of this, the boss is also going to be applying a stacking damage increasing debuff called Stone Bolt, so keep an eye on your group and your tank's health and use cooldowns where needed. If you will fail to heal Chromie or do enough damage to the boss during the cataclysmic phase, the boss will wipe an entire group. When the boss gets to 100 energy, you are in the burn phase. Chromie puts up a time shield and you get a massive buff, so stand in that you're going to get increased damage, haste, cooldown rate, and resource regeneration, so put everything you have into damaging the boss here. Well, and once we are done shooting the boss, that's it, the fight is over. We have win and moving towards the next boss. So next battle is against Tyr, the Infinite Keeper. This is very actually interesting fight, liked it a lot. Well, I said about every fight, new dungeon, actually very cool animation, very like surroundings and atmosphere in there. I like the floating cloaks, I like the new bosses and also see some old bosses that are from previous expansions. But once again, to spawn the boss, we need to clear the room, and we are gonna have the fight in this room by killing all mobs there. One important ability to know here, so as you saw, the mob was teleporting into the sun circle and casting ability towards a player. If you do not interrupt this one or stun the mob or somehow knock them in the air and mob finishes the cast, it can make a severe damage to the player, sometimes even one shot. So watch out for those and definitely give some control if you can to this mob. So Tyr has 3 main attacks. First, in his Infinite Hand technique, is the first one is Titanic Blow. So this ability is a frontal cone attack, and it will drop on your tank. This ability deals damage and knocks them back. Watch out for this one, as it can knock you off the platform. And don't step on top of the tanks for this one, as the ability strikes in a cone. Titanic Blow also leaves behind a consecrated crown that deals damage if you stand in it every 1.5 seconds. The next ability, Infinite Annihilation. It's not a big cone attack, but this one goes on a random player, so just dodge out of that one. Once again, it will leave behind the consecrated crown. And then the last ability in this trio is Dividing Strike. This deals damage in the area near the boss and it needs to be split between your group. If Dividing Strike doesn't hit at least 2 players, the boss gains a stacking damage increase buff called Titanic Improvement that increases Tyr's damage by 33% for the remainder of the fight. Then we also have Spark of Tyr. This is a magic debuff that goes on the 2 players and it deals over 25,000 arcane damage every second to the entire group within 8 yards of the player with a debuff. I wouldn't recommend mass dispel it without any defensive CDs or big heals for the group, as it deals group-wide AoE damage. Just dispel one quickly, heal up the group, and then dispel the other one when you are ready. It has enough seconds to take, and it's much easier for you as a healer to manage those. This damage. When the boss gets to 0 energy, starts the Siphon Outstone phase, and he is going to gain a big shield called Radiant Barrier. This will release lots of orbs, temporal essences, which will appear around the room. The orbs will try to get to the pillar in the center of the room, and if an orb reaches a pillar, the boss shield gets bigger and it deals rate-wide AoE damage. So use increase speed abilities to catch them all if you have full HP, or can use some defensive Calypso or collect the orbs that are spawning over the consecrated ground. Collecting them also give you a haste and movement speed buff, so even more reason to collect them, and that's really just on repeat until the boss is dead. Moving forward, we're going to fight against a time lost battlefield. But currently we are dealing with a trash. This is dragon, just watch out for swirls and con breath. This is an encounter actually that quite fun. For those who never done it before, you need to pass this room without hitting by those mobs are staying there. They don't attack you, they don't do any damage, but your goal is to reach another side of the room, and it's enough that one player does it, then they can spawn a portal, and everyone at the beginning of this encounter can portal to this player and skip this room. But it's very fun to test your reflection abilities, and as well it's actually just fun and engaging encounter that well, I don't know if it will be added on the Mythic Plus, since it can sometimes slow your run by a hole, but we'll see. Here we are cleaning our path to the next boss, and to clean the path we need to kill the ads near the sun, so when they explode they do AoE damage on a group, and also they clean the sun, the pathway that help us to continue moving to the next portal, so Nostormo can help us to open the next portal together with Chromium. This actually does quite a lot of damage because it's many odds, and every odd once it dies, it does OE damage. Try to, if you can, try to keep your healing rain always up, and also use Cloudburst Totem to collect the overheal, and then split it between the party, and that should be more than enough. I wouldn't use any serious cooldowns on this trash. Some trash actually can be easily avoided, but we are moving forward, and currently the trash doesn't do much, so we're just cleaning the path towards the next boss. To start the boss as well, we need to process with a small encounter. The boss actually will be called different variations. It will depend on your faction. But all of the abilities are basically the same for boss. So I'm playing Orc, I'm playing Horde, and I will fight against Alliance and Alliance boss. So currently this trash does not do much, but I see it adds more abilities later, and have more severe damage to the group later going on. So currently we are fighting against the Alliance army, and also you can see that there's troopers that are fighting for the Horde. They are marked in green. The other odds that you can see is Alliance odds, but you can't see their nameplates. You can actually manually target them and manually use your abilities towards them, but you can't see them as a nameplate. I don't know if it will be changed or it's supposed to be like that, but that's gonna persist through entire fight. So I would say first, as soon as the boss spawns, first dangerous ability in this fight is probably a shockwave. The boss will start spamming big cone attacks in random directions, inflicting over 110,000 damage. Just dodge them the best you can. The most dangerous ability here then is probably Blade Storm. For 6 seconds, the boss jumps to a random player and starts chasing them and blade storming on them, inflicting 74,000 nature damage every second. Kite the boss around room to avoid dying, and don't run into your group, as the ability has 8 yards range and will also damage your teammates. Battle Cry is a group-wide AoE. You can't avoid it. It deals about 37,000 nature damage to all players, so just heal it up. And then for the Alliance or for the Horde, this ability will summon 3 odds and command to attack the players, cleave them down quickly. The boss also uses Mortal Strike on the tank. This attack deals about 185,000 physical damage twice each time, applying Mortal Wounds on the tank. The Mortal Wounds applies a 75% healing reduction debuff and lasts for 5 seconds. Just make sure your tank is alive and has some cooldowns, otherwise use some healing CDs to top the tank until the debuff falls off. The other important thing in this fight is that when the boss kills little odds that fighting on your side, boss gain a stack of battle senses. This causes their next attack to deal group-wide AoE damage, so try not to drag the boss over the odds during Blade Storm and things like that. But if a few odds die, it's not a very big deal, and it's going to happen anyway. Just be ready to use some heals to keep your team alive. So that's entire fight. Watch out for small odds. Sometimes they also do blade storms and some AoE damage. You can easily just run away from them or use controls, so that works on the odds. And interrupts and other target control also works here on the odds. Next boss we are going to do is Morchi. Morchi is an evil alter ego of Chromie. Chromie is helping us in this dungeon, and we are here to discover what Morchi is up to and also to try to face her in the next battle. There's not that many trash moving to Morchi, as I can remember. Longest mob fight was I think at the beginning, and when you clear the portals to the various platforms. Some of the odds to put debuffs on your players or do some stunning abilities. Watch out for those, and yeah, a lot of AoE damage, so keep an eye on your team. So here we're approaching Morchi. This is, I would say, quite easy fight, but it can get very difficult and very quickly. Morchi always fires a Sun Blast to the tank, which deals damage in a line in front of him. So I recommend do not stand behind the tank. She's also going to spawn time traps around the arena. If you step into one of the traps, you'll get rooted for 30 seconds, which definitely isn't ideal, and especially during the next ability, Familiar Faces. This ability spawns an odd for each player individually. It's a copy of a player that will always fixate on them and chase their player, and this odds deals damage in a small area around them, so don't let them catch you, otherwise it can be very painful. The easiest way to deal with these odds is just to drag them through a time trap that will lock them in stasis, so you can go back to debasing the boss, and be careful not to trigger the trap yourself, as it can happen. It also does a lot of AoE damage to entire party once you move them into the trap, so you better coordinate with your team on this rotation. The main ability of Morchi is more problems. This ability is when Morchi will randomly spawn alternative versions of herself that are very lookalike Morchi, but the right one is always without a head. So quickly find the right Morchi without a head and place with your team behind her. When Morchi finishes her cast, she will transform into Infinite Dragon form and unleash a breath attack called Dragon Breath. The breath lays across the entire platform, so the only safe spot is right behind and on the sides of the right Morchi. The fight is straightforward, and as long as you time trap your odds, heal your group, and you can spot the real Morchi, that should be not a big deal, and I would say good luck with that one. Some of the actually funny parts when for the first time we went into the dungeon, it was hard to see what had were the Morchi. But you get used to it with some time and watch, just watch for Morchi without the head. So we are moving to the next boss, Chronolord Deos. It's a actually a final boss. So we have already path cleared to it. We will come back to the ice cave where we've been before, and we are going to face our last boss. I would say this fight is one of my favorites, if not the most favorite. I very like that you can influence the fight as well with how you position and as well how you um, coordinate with your team mates and how do you call the things because once again it can get difficult and hard to heal if things are not done properly. There's a few mobs that we will have to kill to clear our paths to Chronolord. But we are already in location where the boss will spawn. Watch out here for swirls and also the con breath. This one does towards the tank, so if you tank, position yourself on the other side of the group, and for DPS, just do not stay behind the tank and stay behind the trash. So this is actually interesting fight for those who as well interested in lore and more explanation of the Dragonflight and how the each character and each dragon, what role it plays in a story. And currently we are waiting for some RP that will be done quick, and we are having our path cleared towards the final boss, Chronolord Deos. So I will start that this one can be pretty tricky, but once you understand the order, it will be easy. So the main ability of the boss, and the ability that might wipe your group is Infinity Orbs. Almost with the beginning of the fight, the boss will spawn 2 orbs above 2 random players' heads. This is important to note as it does not spawn in random places, and having your group positioning themselves well can help to simplify your job significantly. Once you having your group positioning themselves, you will see that the orb management become quite easy. So once spawned, the orbs start falling to the ground. If you stay underneath an orb, its descent is slowed. When an orb reaches the ground, it does group-wide AoE damage and applies a debuff called Infinity Nova. That debuff increases the damage of the debuff tick by 300% for 4 seconds, so you need to space this out. I volunteered to watch for the orbs, but either way, when the 2 orbs appear, one player should stand still to slow the drop of one orb, while the other player moves away. That lets one orb drop quickly, and as soon as your debuff falls off, the second player can step away to let that one drop as well. Make sure everyone knows that only one orb can drop at a time. Deus also has a temporal breath attack that deals 185,000 arcane damage, and additionally over 44,000 arcane damage every second for 10 seconds. This ability always goes on the tank, so just position yourself on the opposite side from the tank and watch out for those every time. During the first phase, the boss also summons infinite keepers. It's good to nuke these odds as soon as possible, as the odds put an annoying magical debuff on the players called Chronal Burn that inflicts over 50,000 arcane damage for 15 seconds every 1 second. Every time, keepers that you kill will remove 20% of the boss's health, so that how you are going to progress the fight. Each active rift will also start spawning odds, and so you want to group this up and clip them down. Try to keep everyone alive, use CDs, and watch for the orbs every time. When all 4 timekeepers are dead, starts stage 2 of the fight, and boss will start corrupting Nasdorm with his bronze magic. This creates a whole bunch of swirls that you need to dodge, called Temporal Scar. The big swirls leave behind sand puddles that deal a lot of damage, and if you stand at them, it does even more damage on you. The big swirls leave behind sand puddles, rotate around the room, and try to maximize your area space as much as you can. And this is basically just one big burn phase during which you need to kill the boss before you run out of space, or the boss kills you. That was quite epic fight, and all 8 dungeon actually was very fun. I think it's very interesting dungeon. I can't wait to see it on Mythic Plus and actually change myself with it. And once again, I very liked previous versions of the Mega Dungeons, Mechagon, Karajan, and Zavesh. They are very fun and always have some history behind it. That's one of my favorite things about World of Warcraft. So we had quite great time cleaning this dungeon, and if I remember correct, we even got a mount, and never seen it before. So yeah, that was pretty fun. Going through the mega dungeon on my shaman. But now I am off to level my holy paladin. Come chat with me to Twitch and leave a like and subscribe. See ya!